Hey guys, this is Grant Chachere here. I'm your podcast for the Set It Up podcast. Um, if anybody's from Louisiana sees Set It Off, yes, I did name it after Boosie's song. It is the anthem of everything Louisiana, so it makes perfect sense for why I decided to pick Set It Off. But yes, this podcast will talk about everything involving Louisiana sports, from high school to the pros. Uh, Probably a lot more college and pros than high school, but I'm still going to talk about high school as well. Interview some players from high school, stuff like that. High school football, high school baseball, basketball, you name it. But this show was made because one, I'm a young guy. I just graduated from LSU. I'm trying to bolster my career. I actually used to intern at Gridiron Football and Louisiana Football Magazine, covering high school football and college football across the state of Louisiana. But then I also cover LSU football and baseball for And the Valley Shook, which is the LSU affiliate for SB Nation, and also covered the LSU baseball team from the start of the season until Omaha. And I was actually in Omaha for the whole entire thing and watched them win the College World Series, which marked off a bucket list of going to Omaha to watch the College World Series. So I had a fun time doing that. That's the first thing. The second thing is to promote promote and cover everything involved in Louisiana. Louisiana is one of the best places for sports. One of the best places to watch high school sports. LSU. You can throw in Tulane and UL in there as well. But then also for professional sports like the Saints and the Pelicans. So I'm going to cover all those things on this podcast. This is the very first one, so it might not go smoothly, but hey, the heck with it, you know. You got to start somewhere. But today, for the Set Up podcast, we'll talk about LSU's crazy week they had the week before this one. We'll also discuss the Saints and their end of the season, what my thoughts are about that. But then also we'll talk a little bit about LSU men's and women's basketball as well, because they had a pretty good weekend as well. But yeah, so just go off the top with it. First things first, we're going to talk about the crazy week LSU had, crazy week that LSU football had last week. So to start everything off, this is kind of what happened. So LSU, they played Wisconsin in the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa, Florida, the Tampa Bay area. And they had to face a pretty pesky Wisconsin team, even though they've been struggling throughout the year. But they're still a formidable opponent because of Wisconsin. They're in the Big Ten. They play some pretty good competition. Luke Fickell's a great coach. And it was kind of a back and forth game. LSU went down 14-0, and then they came back and won the game due to Garrett Nussbaum's 98-yard drive, which pretty much cemented. I wouldn't say it cemented him as a starting quarterback for next year, but that whole entire game, I think, showed that LSU's headed to the right direction next year. But yeah, let's talk a little bit of the game. So Nussbaum, of course, he was the MVP, 31 of 45 for 395 yards, nearly 400 yards in his first ever start against a pretty formidable opponent. Josh Williams had 12 carries, 51 yards, and Brian Thomas completed his LSU career with 8 catches, 98 yards, for 2 touchdowns. He declared for the NFL draft a few days ago. And then also another note is that Malik Neighbors, even though he had 3 catches for 23 yards, his whole purpose playing that game was to break the LSU career receiving yard record, which he did. He now surpassed Josh Reed for the career receiving yard holder in LSU history. Congrats to him, and he will be a top 10 pick in the NFL for sure. Another notable thing was that Jay Daniels did not play. I mean, he's going to be a first-round pick. The Heisman Trophy winner doesn't need to play in that game. He's going to be a first-round pick. There's no reason for him to play in that game to risk his drafts, to risk his money. He's going to be a first-round pick. And he will be a top 10 pick. Maybe even the number 1 quarterback taking the draft. But Who knows? We'll see. But the one thing that set up this game was this. Tanner Mordecai, before that game, had 6 touchdowns. He had a touchdown interception ratio of 6-4. He struggled. Even though he had a pretty good career at SMU. Let's be real. He had a pretty good career at SMU. He had back-to-back 3,500 yard passing seasons. But under a new staff at Wisconsin, and they're trying to change their whole offensive identity over there in Madison. He really struggled, and his best game was throwing for 277 yards and 1 touchdown. That was the second game of the year against a Washington State team that I think finished 5-7, so they lost that game. And then that was his best game all year. And then he threw for 2 in the first quarter, and absolutely torched LSU. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. Now they got after him. They got 5 sacks, which is pretty impressive against that Wisconsin offensive line. But that's not good, especially for LSU, and they've been struggling with defense all year. And so that brought in a lot of changes. I don't think that was the main catalyst for why Matt House got fired. I mean, there's a whole season. I mean, he allowed 700 yards. His defense allowed 700 yards of total offense against Ole Miss. And that was probably the most notable game. But there's bad defensive performances throughout the whole entire year. So, it didn't shock me that he got released. I knew it was going to happen after the season. A lot of people were like, why he's not getting fired now? And yada, yada, yada. But Brian Kelly's a guy who likes to wait it out after the year. You saw that with Brian Pulling last year. He didn't even fire him last year. He demoted him in February. And then Pulling took the AD job at a D3 college up in Massachusetts. And so, a lot of people are like, why is he fired now? Because Brian Kelly likes to wait out the process, likes to wait out the season, for the season to be over. And then, bang, day after the game, Matt House gets fired along with the rest of the defensive staff, including Kerry Cooks, who was the safeties coach, Robert Steeples, the cornerbacks coach, and I believe, and then there was somebody, and then Jimmy Lindsay, defensive line coach. Now, Jimmy Lindsay didn't really coach this year. He had a major health scare. And LSU does not let go. It sucks, but it is what it is. You have to make changes. And what did they do? Well, they hired Blake Baker. Blake Baker is somebody who's respected down in Louisiana. He was a great linebacker for Tulane for 5 seasons from 2000 to 2004. Fun fact, he actually played under my dad. My dad was a linebackers coach his whole entire time at Tulane. So I've known Coach Baker ever since, he played at Tulane, seeing my dad's meetings and stuff like that as a little kid. But after he was finished his career at Tulane, he was defense coordinator at La Tech, had a pretty successful run there. He went to Miami, was defense coordinator there, and then he got let go. His first year in Miami was great, fantastic, but the next year they lost a lot of their guys, and then he was kind of he was let go. But then he got hired at LSU. He really helped develop that linebacker core to become one of the best, not only in the SEC but the nation. And that was the weakest part of LSU's defense. That was the least heralded part of LSU's defense, and ended up being the most what's the word I'm looking for? It ended up being the heartbeat of the team because LSU didn't really have a great year that year. They barely made it to a bowl game that year, and their linebackers were the ones that kept everything together on the defensive side, and that also kind of carried over to the offense as well because LSU's linebacking core that year kept LSU in a lot of games. He was responsible for that, and he goes to Mizzou. He changed one of the worst defenses, not only in the SEC, but the country, into one of the best. And I'm about to go to his bio in a second that LSU had. 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. Here we go. So, kind of look at his bio real quick, kind of give you guys a gist. So, Blake Baker was hired by LSU in the fifth. He had the number 4 scoring defense in the SEC. He also was number 4 nationally in forced fumbles with 17. He was number 5 in SEC in both rushing defense and total defense, and he was also ranked. His defense at Missouri was also ranked 11th nationally in sacks and number 18, and they were 18th nationally in tackles for loss. So you can tell he runs a very aggressive defense, which is much needed for this LSU defense, as you had Harold Perkins and Greg Penn. You also have some talented guys on the defensive line as well. So he fits in well with LSU. Like I said, he really developed Damone Clark, who ended up being an All-American, was second in the nation in tackles. And Damone Clark is now starting for the Cowboys. Damone Clark was kind of a guy who was kind of a role player for LSU for a little while, and then his senior year under Blake Baker, he became a monster. A fantastic player for LSU. And he really was the heart of the team. He was really the best player on LSU's team that year. So that shows you what kind of coach Coach Baker really is. And not only that, look at Miami. They're the number 13 defense in the country and 12th nation yards allowed per play. And they're also top 20 in rush defense, red zone defense, and pass defense. And he had two linebackers who ended up being all ACC, and also they had Jalen Phillips, who is a starter for the Dolphins right now, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL right now. So that just shows you kind of work he did, and then also a lot of tech. As you can see here, his defense in La Tech in 2018 was number 4 in the nation in sacks per game, number 12 in tackles for loss, and 33rd in turnovers gained. He also helped to develop Jalen Ferguson, who led the nation in sacks to 17.5. He also ranked second nationally for tackles for loss with 26.5. So that kind of shows you what type of coach he really is. He's a great coach. He likes to be aggressive, and I can't wait to see what Harold Perkins does in his defense. But yeah, guys, I mean, this is a hell of a coach. This is actually somebody I mentioned to people that, like, let's say they were going to break away from Ed House. This is going to be one of the top candidates. I mean, not only spent a good bit of time in the state of Louisiana as a player and a coach, but his wife also was an all SEC soccer player at LSU, and she's from Mandeville. So she's also from Mandeville, which is in the North Shore of the New Orleans area. So he's got family down here too through his wife. And also his track record shows out. It's what LSU needs at the time. They have a lot of great edge rushers, Harold Perkins. I think this really is going to help LSU in the long run. No matter, I don't know how long he's going to stay here, because I think he's going to be a top head coaching candidate pretty soon because of all the work he's done. But it'll be really exciting to see what LSU does here with their defense, and we might get back to what everyone's used to seeing LSU play defense, not only in the state but nationwide. So it's a really exciting time for LSU right now. But that's not the only exciting news at LSU. Right now, Brian Kelly, when he first took the job at LSU, the whole thing about Brian Kelly was two things. One, was he the right fit? Two, can he recruit? One, I think the one is was a ridiculous notion. The first hand, I actually, when I was with the Reveille at LSU for a little bit, I actually did a column about why the Brian Kelly narrative, that whole right fit narrative, was, it was just a bunch of BS. Because at LSU, one, the only culture that we value is winning. That's number one. Number two, the whole right fit thing doesn't make any sense, because Lincoln Riley was one of the top, was one of the best coaches in college football at Oklahoma. when USC, he had no ties to California, but USC hired him anyway. But everyone's praising, oh, this great fit and yada, 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 even though he never coached in California and his defenses were really suspect. And that's showing now. Another perfect example of that is Scott Frost in Nebraska. Scott Frost, he led UCF to a 12-0 record in the second year. Well, not 12-0, but like 14-0 record in the second year UCF. After the previous year in his first season, they went 6-7, and a lot of people were praising that. A lot of people were praising him. He gets hired at Nebraska. I mean, he was a national championship winning quarterback in Nebraska. He's from Nebraska. It has to be the perfect fit. It has to be the perfect fit. But there's one thing that a lot of people didn't realize when Nebraska hired Scott Frost was that it's really easy to win at UCF. Like, if you go, the thing is, people are like, oh, well, in 2 years, he took over 0-12 program in UCF and made him undefeated 14-0 record, and they won the Fiesta Bowl over Auburn, and, well, not Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl over Auburn, and yada, yada, yada. But, like, it's really not that hard to win at UCF. If you go 0-12 at UCF, that's bad because you're in Orlando, Florida, and UCF is one of the biggest enrollments in Florida. And, I mean, it's Florida. It's Orlando. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that hard to find players, especially given the success that UCF has had over the past 15 to 20 years. I mean, they've been to 2 New Year's Six bowl games and won them both. So, it was never really – and then he goes to Nebraska, and he's by far probably the worst coach in Nebraska history. He has the lowest winning percentage in Nebraska football history. I mean, and his conference record was atrocious. I mean, it was bad. It was just a bad era for Nebraska football. And, they were probably by far the greatest 3-9 team ever of all time, ever, because I think most of the losses came by like 7 points or less, something crazy like that. But still, like, it was not a good time in Nebraska for Scott Frost. Not the homecoming that he really wanted. But things don't work out, and that's why the right fit narrative doesn't – I don't buy in the right fit narrative because really the only culture that people want is winning. So it disproved that. The second thing I mentioned was, can you recruit? Notre Dame, they didn't really have the best recruit class. Usually Notre Dame was usually between like 10 and 15. Sometimes we're a little bit lower than 15. But Brian Kelly did have some good players over Notre Dame. Let's not lie. But the reason why Notre Dame will never be the top in terms of the recruiting rankings is because they're at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a private school, is an academic school. The requirements needed to get into Notre Dame as an athlete are much stricter than, let's just say, at LSU or Alabama and places like that. And that kind of will hinder your recruiting a little bit because you need to get the players that you want. And usually sometimes those requirements, those restrictions won't allow you to get those players that you want. That's why Brian Kelly came to LSU. He even mentioned that himself. Like, he wants to get the best players in the country and to coach the best players in the country. And he's proven that. Last year I believe they finished 6th in the recruiting rankings. And this year, right now, they are currently 7th on 3 and 10th on 24/7. I think on 3 is a little bit more accurate than 24/7 because on 3 literally just took all the best 24/7 guys and put them on there. But I'm still going to respect both. Still a top 10 class, but even though that's not that great. We want to be top 5. We want to be top 3. Now I'll show you why that this is actually a really good class. This is the top recruits for the state of Louisiana on 3. Dominic McKinley, Trey Green, Deshaun McBride, Talon Singleton, Gabe Relaford, Colin Billio, Joe Rogers, Juwan Johnson, Kalaj Cobbins, Michael Turner, Kyrie Lee. All right, that and Bernard Kazi. Those are your top 15, and then Demarion Johnson. All right. Do you guys notice how much LSU's on the right? LSU. Yeah, you get the gist. LSU signed 9 of the top 10 recruits in the state of Louisiana, including Dominic McKinley, who was a 5-star. Dominic McKinley's a freak. He's 6'5", 6'6", 280 pounds, but he runs a 4.6. I mean, he's a freak. I mean, he's an absolute freak. Trey Edge Green is a freak as well. I'll show you guys some highlights as well. Got to mention that. Gabe Relaford, I actually did get the chance to watch him in the playoffs when they went to Archbishop Shaw, right outside the New Orleans area. I mean, he's a dog. I mean, these guys are all dogs. Yeah, they may not show up in the rankings, but this is very important. Why? Because Brian Kelly, even though like a lot of people say, well, Brian Kelly's not from Louisiana. He's not going to be able to recruit Louisiana guys. It's important to build relationships with Louisiana coaches. You want to build a wall around Louisiana. I mean, 12 of the top 15 players in the state of Louisiana signed with LSU. Build that wall, yo. Build that wall. And that's how you're able to get some of these guys. Dominic McKinley. I'll show you a little bit of highlight tapes. So this is Dominic McKinley. Like I said, 4'6", 4'7". I mean, this guy's a freak. I mean, he absolutely is. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's a big man. I mean, that's the number one recruit in the state of Louisiana. That is a big, big man. I mean, that's just a freak right there. But anyway, but going back, sorry about that, guys. Going back to I was saying, that guy's a freak. I mean, that's the type of guys you want in the state of Louisiana. You want to defend the boot, protect the boot from outsiders like Alabama and more recently Texas and Texas A&M, because those guys, like for example Alabama, Nick Saban, remember, was a head coach at LSU from 2000 to 2004, so he still has all those relationships with the Louisiana coaches. They kept when he went to Alabama. Steve Sarkisian, the same thing. He had a lot of great relationships in the state of Louisiana from his time at Alabama under Saban. So very important that you're able to get 12 of the top 15 players in the state of Louisiana. So it's a pretty big deal. By the way, Dominic McKinley, I think they mentioned this, but Dominic McKinley was originally committed to A&M after Jimbo Fisher got fired from A&M. And, LSU became a lot better. It looked very clear that LSU was about to flip them because it played in LSU's favor. LSU kept baiting on the door, and then finally able to flip them on New Year's Eve. So it's a pretty big signing there. But they're not done. They might also sign Terry Bussey too. It's a five-star athlete out of Timken, Texas. He's also an A&M commit, so that's another name you need to watch out for come the final signing day in early February. I know I'm talking about the 2024 class, but the 2025 class is the cream of the crop. That is one of the best. LSU right now is the number one. Has the number one recruiting class with the class of 2025. I'm going to show you guys that in a second. So let's go. Let me show you that screen real quick. So right now, LSU, so after yesterday, for 2 days, yesterday. 2 days ago, because Bryce Underwood committed 2 days ago, the top prospect in the country, number one overall prospect He also is a quarterback, so that makes him not only is the highest rated prospect to ever sign with LSU, he's also the number one quarterback to ever sign. Not only the number one quarterback to ever sign with LSU, he's also the number one prospect to ever sign with LSU, according to 24/7. He's actually the original holder for the greatest all-time recruit in LSU history was Leonard Fournette. Now it's Bryce Underwood. It shows you all the work that was put in LSU in terms of the quarterback position. It started with Coach O and Steve Ensminger with Joe Burrow. Then it's continued under Brian Kelly and Joe Sloan with Jane Daniels. Both those guys I just mentioned, the two quarterbacks, both won the Heisman Trophy. That makes it appealing to someone like Bryce Underwood. And blam, they're able to get him. Jacorian Moore. It's a five-star prospect out of Duncanville, Texas. He committed to LSU back in August, the same day that Caden Durham, who's a class of 2024 running back, who will be on LSU's campus next year. DeCorey Moore decided to commit to LSU right then and there as well. Number 1 receiver in the country, number 1 player in the state of Texas, and number 4 nationally in the class of 25. Harlem Berry, number 1 running back in the country. I actually got a chance to see him play. And there were some questions. Oh, he plays at a small school in Louisiana. His competition is not that great and blah, blah, blah. But I have to tell you this, guys. The school he's at right now, they were a annual 2-8, 1-9 team before he got there. When he got there, under then head coach Frank Ganduza, they made it to the playoffs for the first time in a while. And then they went to the semifinals last year, the first time in the program's history. This year they made the quarterfinals. So it shows you how much Harlem Berry has mentioned that program over there at St. Martin's. I mean, he's going to be a guy that will step in and be a big-time difference maker at LSU. And I also want to mention that he committed on the 3rd of January, and ironically was on the 10-year anniversary that Leonard Fournette committed to LSU. And then you also have Keelan Moses. Even though he's not as heralded as the 3 guys above him, he has been the leader of this class. He's been the most vocal leader of this class. I mean, and Keelan Moses, let me tell you guys, he's just every bit of advertised as a leader. I mean, I've seen him play twice, and he's an awesome leader. He's the most vocal player on the field. I mean, he's a great player. And I'm going to show you guys some of their highlights as well. Just a second. Let me go to straight. Let me go here. And let me show you Bryce Underwood's. So this is a sophomore tape. He doesn't have his junior tapes up yet. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this. I mean, as you can tell, just look at this, guys. I mean, he's 6'4", 210. I mean, he's a pretty big kid. He's going to remind you a lot of Jaden Daniels. That's from the sophomore stats: 37 touchdowns, 2,700 yards. So, I mean, look at this. I mean, he evaded tacklers. I mean, great, very calm, great in the pocket. And he's also very agile too. I think he ran for over 670 yards as well. I mean, he's a pretty big time player out of the state of Michigan, and that's a long ways from Louisiana, guys. I mean, that's as north as you can get. I mean, that reminds you a lot of Jaden Daniels. I mean, that run was almost identical to the run Jaden Daniels had against Florida. I mean, he's going to be a great player. I mean, look at the zip of the ball. I mean, what an awesome player that LSU's getting, and Brian Kelly and co are going to be very happy when he steps on campus next year. Probably be in the spring of 2025 if he stays committed, and might be the successor to Garrett Nussmeier. So pretty big get by LSU. Again, I'm going to show you guys another highlight tape because why not? And I'm going to show you guys this. This is DeCorey Moore. Show you guys this. There might be a little bit of a highlight tape. Let me see. Right here we got. Yeah, why not? Let's show you DeSoto. DeSoto was the state champion this year for 5A. I mean, he's the number one receiver in the country, guys. DeCorey Moore, pretty big time player out of Duncanville High School, which is probably arguably the best high school program in the state of Texas right now. And they've been producing a lot of players left and right out of there the last few years. I mean, yeah, so he's going to be a big-time player for LSU, number one receiver in the country. I'm also going to show you a little bit of Harlem Berry. And you're going to see, he's pretty fast too. I mean, he could also, not only is he a great runner, but you can also catch the ball in the backfield too, as you see there. I saw a lot of that. Oh, and look at the speed of Bird. Look at it. He was surrounded by 3 different guys. He just broke out of that. He's an incredible player, somebody you need to watch out for in the future at LSU. And LSU's very lucky to have him. And they might also sign James Simon as well out of Calvary Baptist. So they might be able to sign the top 2 running backs in the state of Louisiana. He's also utilized as a wildcat quarterback. That just shows you how much he means to that St. Martin's Episcopal team. So very, very lucky to LSU could be very lucky to have all 3 of those guys. Keelan Moses is a great player as well. He's been the vocal leader of that team. So this just shows you a lot how well LSU's been doing the recruiting side of the ball. That's a lot. I think this might be the best work that Frank Wilson's done at LSU, even going back to his time at LSU under Les Miles, when he brought in all kinds of recruiting, like all-time great recruiting classes. So this is probably the best week he's ever done. I mean, the number 1 quarterback, running back, receiver in one class is absolutely ridiculous, no matter the program, whether it's Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State. That just shows you the amount of work that this coaching staff has done, especially Frank Wilson and Joe Sloan, and getting all these top guys from whether it's Michigan, Texas, and Louisiana. But yeah, it's a crazy week that's coming up. It's been a crazy week for LSU. Really crazy week. I mean, just breaking news after breaking news after breaking news. That's why, if you had to do a podcast or an article or something, probably best to do it all one day after all the news has been brought in and blah, blah, blah. And then also going back to Blake Baker, I didn't mention this. He will be the highest paid assistant in all college football. $2.5 million a year. I think that's what I saw. So pretty big contract, pretty hefty contract. LSU, very, very exciting time for LSU football and everything. Yeah. So moving on to the Saints. The Saints, I mean, yeah, they won. They won 48-17 over the Falcons. It was a very disappointing year for the Saints. Very disappointing. I mean, with all the hype, they signed Derek Carr, and they kind of revamped their offense. And I don't say revamped because they kept Pete Carmichael. I mean, for Pete's sake, but everyone thought they were going to be able to improve off of last year. They had one of the easiest, if not the easiest, schedule in the NFL. So it was, and with all the talent they had on both sides of the ball, it made sense that the Saints were going to win the division, but nothing came to fruition. The offense was not creative. It was lackluster. Derek Carr would start off the game slow, then decide to play like Peyton Manning in the last quarter, make a little last-minute comeback. Doesn't matter. He's called the empty yards emperor by Matt Moscona down there at AFR. But yeah, it was just a bad season for the Saints. They signed Jamal Williams from the Lions. He was a leading rusher, the leading touchdown leader last year. He had the most touchdowns in the NFL. He didn't score his first touchdown of the year until the Falcons game, where he scored the last touchdown of this of the game on a fake kneel handoff, I guess we could call it. They're in victory formation, and then Jameis Winston handed the ball to Jamal Williams, and he ran for a touchdown. By the way, I'm going to get to that in a second. Describe that, but it's just been a very disappointing season for the Saints. I think they're going to make some changes, not with the head coach. I think they're going to keep Dennis Allen, even though I disagree with it. They're going to keep Dennis Allen, most likely. But they're most likely going to fire Pete Carmichael, bring in somebody fresh, because Dennis Allen's job is on the line. But if they do decide to keep Pete Carmichael, I don't blame Saints fans for not buying season tickets next year. I mean, and that just shows you that if they don't fire Pete Carmichael, that just lets everybody know that they're okay with being mediocre. Sell like it is. They're okay with being mediocre. So they need to make changes. I don't care what side of the ball is on. They need to make changes. And quite frankly, if they don't, and next year they have the same issues, they still struggle, they don't make the playoffs, I can see the Saints not only firing Dennis Allen, but I can see them firing Mickey Loomis as well. Because a lot of the problems are not just coaching, but they're also the front office. Mickey Loomis is really, outside of the 2016-27 draft classes, which is the draft classes where they drafted Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and Ryan Ramsey, and they had all these great players. His draft class has been dog poo. I mean, they've been poo. I mean, they traded up the first round. They traded up, gave away some of their picks, including first round picks, to draft. What's the guy's name for Texas San Antonio? I forgot the guy's name. He's old news. They did that, and a lot of people thought they were going to draft Lamar Jackson. Let me look up the guy's name real quick, but a lot of people thought they're going to draft Lamar Jackson, but that's why they traded up. But then they drafted. Let me look this up. Yeah, I forgot, guys. It's not. Yeah, Marcus Davenport. Like Marcus Davenport's last year, the Saints had half a sack. He was awful. And if you're gonna make that type of trade, you better make sure you hit, because if you don't hit, it's gonna come back to bite you in the butt. So that was just a bad move by Mickey Loomis, and I think the Saints' issues are more than just Dennis Allen; they're also Mickey Loomis's too. And it's shown because in all of his press conferences, he's been really, really testy. Really testy with the media. Kind of starking back at him, stuff like that, which lets me know that he might be on the hot seat too, boys and girls. So I think that they can make some changes. But going back, I finished that point. But remember what I said that Jamal Williams didn't score a touchdown all year after the previous year was the NFL's leading touchdown leader? I mean, let me show you guys this. So they scored the last touchdown. So a lot of people thought, maybe just running it up on the Falcons because they're rivals. I mean, the Saints and the Falcons don't vibe with each other. I mean, it's just a known fact around the NFL. But let me just show you guys this. So after Jamal Williams scored the touchdown, Arthur Smith, who is the head coach, was the head coach of the Falcons, he got a little testy. He got a little pissed off at Dennis Allen. I mean, you can see the quarterback hugging it up. He's got a lot of explosives right there, and it looks like Dennis Allen was kind of apologizing a little bit. And then you have the assistant in the background. You guys gotta listen to this. You have him in the background. Listen to this. Yeah, you can tell there's the move. Like, I don't have to spell it out. You guys, I mean, let's just say this. It's two compound words mixed together. One starts with B, one starts with A, and the other word is the other compound word is M and F. I think you guys get the gist of what that assistant coach said in the background. But so there was that fiasco. So the Falcons were pissed off about it, and then literally a few hours later, Arthur Smith gets fired. So it was just a weird turn of events, but all the Saints fans were excited about it. It's like, yeah, we're rubbing up with the Falcons. All the players, they changed, and all the players were something like, yeah, we ran on the Falcons. But then the reason why the players were all excited about was because they changed the play. Dennis Allen, like I said, they're in victory formation. They're about to need it. Jameis Winston, probably one of the most beloved Saints of all time, despite being the backup of much of his career with the Saints, changed the play because he wanted to rub it in on the Falcons. And Dennis Allen, I'm not going to play the clip right now. Dennis Allen apologized for it.
And I'm going to start off by apologizing to Arthur Smith and the Falcons. That was not a play that we intended to run down there to finish out that game. That's not who we are. That's not how we operate. We should have taken a knee. So I want to apologize to them because, look, we're all like we got a good rivalry, and it's a heated rivalry. But there's a way we go about doing our business, and I wasn't happy about that. And I'm going to start off by apologizing.
Okay, you heard that. All right. So I have issues with this. I understand why he apologized, but I have issues with this. One, Dennis Allen's already lost a lot of respect with fans and the players as it is. And when you're going against your biggest rival, your fans and players are going to celebrate that. So when he did that, it's almost like to fans and players that he was sucking it up to the Falcons. I know some people are going to disagree with me with that, but it's just the optics of it all. Number two, he threw his players under the bus. He could have said, well, that was on me. I decided to call the play. I shouldn't have done that. I got lost in the heat of the moment and kept his players out of it. But instead, he threw his players under the bus. And the way the players were reacting, they were celebrating while the coaches weren't. So that lets me know that there is a rift between the coaches and the players. That's not good for a culture. That's not good for the organization. That's not good for the culture of the organization that Gail Benson is trying to run. And that's just a bad look overall. But that lets you know how everybody feels about Dennis Allen, where to the point where you're going to literally change the victory formation play to give the ball to Jamal Williams. But then also it just shows you how much they respect Jamal Williams, how much they want to give that touchdown to him, and the fact that the coaches all year have completely fumbled Jamal Williams. I'm not sure. Maybe Jamal Williams is not the same player as he was last year, but the fact that this whole offense has been wasted from the get-go. It's just coaching. It's just straight up coaching. And I know, like I said, it's also on the front office, but the coach has been horrible too. Just horrible. And if they don't make changes, I don't blame Saints fans for not going to games this year, not buying tickets, not buying any merchandise, because they want to make the Saints organization know and Gil Benson know that, we ain't riding with this dog. We ain't riding with this big dog. So it's just very disappointing. The very disappointing season for the Saints, despite ending it with a 48-17 beatdown over the hated Dirty Birds, as we call them in Louisiana. But you finished the season 98. You barely finished the season 98. Remember, they won like 4 of their last 5 games. So it's if they play like this the whole entire year, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation right now. But hey, it is what it is. But moving on, LSU men's basketball, they picked up a big win over A&M. Last year LSU, and you may very well know, they won their first SEC game of the year before losing all but one the rest of the year, on one of the worst seasons in LSU basketball history. But on Saturday, they held A&M to just 25.4% from the field and 17.9% from three to defeat A&M on the road 68-53. Jordan Wright led the way with had a double-double, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, and had 2 steals in the block. So a very big one for LSU moving forward. Tomorrow they will actually play on Tuesday. They'll play Vanderbilt, a 5-9 Vanderbilt team. So they should pick up a win there. Start SEC play 2-0. That's SEC is very tough this year in basketball, and it has been the past 3 seasons. So I don't expect LSU to have win the SEC, or even finish in the top 7 of the SEC. But if you can finish in the top 7 of the SEC, finish the top half of the SEC, after the year you had last year, that's an improvement, and that's something you can build off of. And that could be a recruiting pitch to future recruits that we're trying to build something special after having the whole Will Wade situation and the fire Will Wade because of the NCAA sanctions. And LSU's had both their hands tied behind their backs because the NCAA is threatening to go after football, and LSU each and every time they're going to try to save football as much as possible before they get to basketball or any other sports on campus. So they had their hands tied behind their backs. So hopefully men's basketball moving forward improve up last year and finish the top half of the SEC. But we'll see. Still a long season ahead, and I'll look forward to seeing how they finish out the rest of the season, including the next game against Vanderbilt on Tuesday. LSU women's basketball, they had a pretty big win over a pretty good Ole Miss team. In Ole Miss, women's, they've been doing pretty good. I think before this game, they were. Let me pull this up. So before the game, they were 11-3 going into the season. I mean, the coach has done a great job over there in rebuilding that team. Last year they went to Sweet 16. So LSU got a pretty big win over Ole Miss on the road. Pretty big performance by Michaela Williams, 20 points, 7-12 from the field, 7 rebounds, and she was 4 for 5 from 3. That was a pretty impressive performance by LSU on the road in a tough environment. And that's, I mean, Ole Miss is a pretty good team. Like I said, Sweet 16 team last year. One of the best teams in the SEC by far. They're definitely in the top five SEC team right now. And to kind of show you guys, I'm going to show you guys this because the Ole Miss coach said a lot of good things about LSU. Show this. But let me play you this clip. Let me start from the beginning because I know you guys want to hear this. So Coach Yo, as they call her down in Ole Miss, she has been responsible for Ole Miss women's basketball being one of the best programs in the SEC, and I expect her to be a top coaching candidate for any of the top jobs in the country pretty soon because she's building something special over there in Oxford. Coach Gillette McCune, because I know her last name is Lawn, so I want to make sure I got that pronounced right. But I'm going to play you this clip. She said a lot of great things about LSU and how to build a program based.
Fan support tonight. For me, I remember Don Staley would always tell me, like, yo, you have to get used to having big crowds. And I'm not being a Debbie Downer, but if we could have this crowd every time we play, I'm not even asking for 9,000. I'm asking for 5,000. If we could start getting 5,000, then there's truth to, like, our players are just not used to playing in front of this type of crowd. And LSU is. Every night they play. I don't care if it's whatever's going on. At one time, we went to Baton Rouge last year. It was an awful storm. Remember that? And I was like, there's no way people will come out. They had 7,000 people out on a weekday. And so I'm just saying, like, if we could get this crowd all the time, we too can get used to this. And then we'll start to get the wins. Okay? I had to get that off my chest. Now.
Yeah, but as you guys can see, there you go. I mean, women's LSU, it just shows you how much support the LSU women's basketball has had ever since Kim Mulkey's been at LSU. Now, they've had support in the past, especially in the mid-2000s in the golden age of women's basketball when they had Simone Augustus. Simone Augustus was roaming the court. And so LSU supports no matter how good or how – if the team – no matter how good or bad, but if the team is winning, if a team is looks like, they're going to win championships, LSU's going to come out and support. You see that with football, of course, but you see that with baseball. You see that with softball. You saw that with men's basketball under Will Wade. And women's basketball currently, right now, they could bring 9,000, 10,000 people in the stands almost every game, which is insane to think about because men's basketball can barely bring out a crowd. We're talking about men's basketball. That's the second biggest money maker for college sports. Not women's basketball, it's men's basketball. So they have women's basketball at LSU outgained men's basketball by thousands. It just shows you the amount of support that LSU women's basketball has had. I really didn't want to talk about the game that much, but I wanted to talk about what Coach Yo said. I think she's doing a fantastic job at Ole Miss, and I think that they're going to eventually have crowds over their Ole Miss because of her success, and I think they're going to go out there and support her like they should, just like LSU fans are supporting Kim Mulkey. But I just want to show you that clip because it shows you, what the vibes are for LSU women's basketball, like how much has changed in the last 3 years, and also and because of that, other program, because not only you have Coach Mulkey, but you also have Don Staley, South Carolina, and I think those two have really enhanced SEC basketball because but since Pat Summitt, they really hasn't been a figurehead of SEC women's basketball. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So I think SEC women's basketball fell through the roof after she retired because she had Alzheimer's. She was getting Alzheimer's, which is the disease that eventually took her life. So they have two figureheads like that in the SEC. I think makes everyone in the SEC better. And I think that's why Coach Woodward won with Kim Mulkey. Because of that, the reason I just mentioned, because Don Staley is the best, why not bring another one of the best in the country? And very exciting time in LSU women's basketball. They have a pretty stacked slate eventually. I think this month. I know they play South Carolina later this month, but after the next few games, so the next home game will be on Thursday. They will be playing against a 13-2 A&M team. Then they'll go on the road to Auburn on the 14th, 11-4 Auburn team. Then they'll play Alabama on next Thursday on the road in Tuscaloosa on the 18th. They come back and play a pretty good Arkansas team. And then they play South Carolina, who's undefeated right now, the number one team in the country. And they're looking to gain revenge from last year after South Carolina blew them out the door in Columbia, one of the most embarrassing losses that LSU had in the last 3 years under Kim Mulkey. Even more embarrassing than Colorado, in my opinion, because LSU looked outclassed from the beginning. But with that being said, a lot of great games at the PMAC with LSU's women's basketball. So make sure you got to support them if you're an LSU fan, or even if you're not an LSU fan, just go out there and watch some good basketball because there's some great basketball being played at the PMAC. Maybe not so much of the men's team, of course, because they've been struggling the last 2 years, but women's basketball has been awesome, phenomenal there. And to see some of the best women's basketball players in the world, you're just watching them play at the PMAC. So yeah, I just want to talk about basketball a little bit. Not really much from basketball this past weekend. Nothing like monumental, but pretty big win for men's basketball, and a pretty big win for LSU women's basketball as well on the road, but also to play that clip to show how much women's basketball has been going to LSU, but then also seeing that grow elsewhere in the SEC because of LSU and Don Staley at South Carolina. But yeah, guys, that pretty much wraps up the pod for today. We're gonna probably, I'm not sure what the schedule like for the podcast is going to be. Still kind of deciding on that. It might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Might be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. It doesn't matter. I'm not sure yet, but once I can figure that out, I'll let you guys know. With that being said, make sure to follow us on social media. Make sure to follow me on social media for any updates about the show, but also other stuff going on with sports in Louisiana or sports nationwide. With that being said, I'm Grant Chachere. I'm your host of the Set Up Podcast. I'll see you guys next time.